So thank you for joining our session today. Myself and Catherine are here to talk to you about how to measure return on investment of your talent brand strategy. We hope to leave you with some really actionable tips that you can take away and implement after this session. First, before we begin, we wanted to introduce ourselves so everybody here can understand why we're here talking to you about this topic today. My name is Lindsay Brady. I argue that I have the best job in LinkedIn. I was the first insights analyst outside of North America back in 2012, feels like a lot longer ago. And since then, I've been building out an insights team for the EMEA region from our Dublin office and now Dubai as well. My team used data from LinkedIn.com, and what we do is we use that data to work with our largest clients and help them make more informed business decisions. If you want to figure out how you can use LinkedIn data to make more informed business decisions, my team will be at the customer success booth, so just a little pitch, you should go and visit them and meet my awesome team. Side note, now back to business. So the reason I'm here today is since 2012, more and more I've been hearing that question: how can we measure return on investment of our talent brand strategy? I hope along with Catherine that we can share some learnings based on our experiences to date.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good morning. My name is Catherine Schlieben. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Worldpay. I've been in this current role for just over a year. My background, probably like many people in the room, is recruitment. Started out as a recruitment agent and many years ago, too many to remember. Around 4 years ago, I got my first opportunity to go in-house, and I set up the in-house team at ITV, which was a fabulous place to work, as you can imagine, and also had lots of challenges, so certainly stood me in good stead for the role here at Worldpay. For those of you that don't know, Worldpay is a company that processes payments. We provide the technology for companies to process consumers' payments either face-to-face or online. We operate globally. We work in 120 currencies with over 200 payment types, and we process around 26 million transactions per day. We were owned by the Royal Bank of Scotland until around 3 years ago. We currently have 4,500 employees globally. And I would say we're growing at a huge pace. We have been called the world's largest startup. With that comes lots and lots of challenges. Culturally, we have a blend of financial services, traditional culture, but then we have this entrepreneurial streak, this fast pace, and an aspiration to be a technology company. So for us, when talking about talent brand, that creates some challenges. When I joined, the recruitment team was part of an RPO, so we had permanent and contingent recruitment being managed by them. We made the decision, because of some of the challenges that the team was facing, to bring that in-house. So we've brought the permanent team in-house. They've been in-house since April. The contingent part is still managed very effectively by the RPO. That's what they do very, very well indeed. And when we brought the team in-house, it was about looking at the processes, the structure, and actually, very importantly, how we communicated to our candidate market. We also rebranded at the beginning of this year. So we threw out the blue and brought in the red. In the beginning, it was a bit of a logo change. It was more about our customers and how we communicate with them. And then over time, we'll be developing the employer brand and the value proposition and really trying to define our culture. We've had some early success in some limited markets, and that's why I'm here today, to talk about that and to focus on some of those areas. So before we talk and dive into how we measure this thing, talent brand, we need to look at actually what is it? What does it mean? I brought this image today from Worldpay. It's a couple of our employees, our colleagues. And for me, this says that our talent brand is about communicating with each other, working collaboratively, sharing insight, sharing expertise. We are smart, spirited, and helpful. Those are our brand personalities, if you like. And for me, it's about us all having a common purpose. It's about knowing where we're going. It's about the message to existing employees, how we communicate with future employees. And it's highly social. It's totally public. It's online. And it's that public version of the employer brand that we communicate, and we communicate about what a great place to work it is.
In today's session, we're going to cover 3 topics. The first one is I have some data-driven findings to share with you, so to make sure that everybody's on board with the importance of measuring your talent brand. Next, Catherine's going to share her experiences and tips from when starting to build your talent brand strategy. And finally, then, most importantly, how do we practically go about measuring return on investment of your talent branding strategies? So to get started, this is my favorite bit. We have our data findings. In the Insights team, every year we run a survey to find out how talent trends are changing over time and also across regions. In 2014, we surveyed 18,000 LinkedIn members, and specifically in the UK today, I have some results to share from the 750 UK respondents. I've pulled out particularly findings relating to talent brand that hopefully you'll find interesting and compelling in building your business case. Firstly, from a candidate's perspective, candidates or professionals on LinkedIn have told us that they want to work in a company that they consider a great place to work. Over half of UK professionals want to work in companies that have this reputation. If you think about your company today, do you think that you fall into that category? I think it's interesting to take a minute to just consider that. What is the public perception? Moving on to the flip side of that, we get a bit more data going on here. But basically, we did the opposite, and we asked employers what are the biggest obstacles they're facing when it comes to trying to attract top talent. The 5 biggest obstacles they told us they're facing are competition, compensation, lack of awareness of employer brand, location, and inability to use data effectively. The one for me that really jumped out here is that lack of awareness of employer brand is now the 3rd biggest obstacle that employers are facing when it comes to trying to attract that top talent. Can I just have a show of hands how many people think that that's a surprising stat? Good. So we all know that it's important. Just in case you don't believe it, I have some more findings to share with you. So the great thing about this survey is that we run it every year. So we're able to see how trends are changing over time. In 2012, 23% of employers responded and said that lack of awareness of talent brand was a big obstacle they were facing. That's increased now by 12 percentage points. So over a third of respondents are now saying that this is a really big challenge. And just in case you don't believe me how significant that change is, I've done the same exercise for the top 5 obstacles. Here you can see for every one of the 5 obstacles, the 2012 results in grey, and then our 2014 results. You can see how significant that change is in lack of employer branding, moving up the ranks. And for me, what really jumps out here is the 4th obstacle is location, and that was number 3 in 2012. What this means is that UK corporate recruiting leaders were having more conversations in 2012 about the location of their business. Now the challenge is attracting people to want to talk to them. With such a big shift coming, we're seeing that companies are starting to change what they're doing. We also asked these UK corporate recruiting leaders, what are they going to do about this big change? And 61% said they're planning to invest more in their employer brand than they ever have before. This number has increased from 57% in 2012. So we're definitely seeing that companies are starting to sit up. They know they need to do something to build their talent brand. And today we're going to share with you what you should be doing and how to measure it. So I think that's enough findings. Hopefully everybody's on board that this is a good thing for you to be investing your time in. And it's great that you're all in the room. That's a good start. Now I'm going to hand over to Catherine, and she's going to share her experiences in Worldpay and what she's learned during that process.
So many companies like us at Worldpay are really at the beginning of building their talent brand. And so we need to think about how we measure it, but I think we also need to look at how we start building that talent brand strategy. So I think one of the most important things, there's three things. There's getting buy-in from the stakeholders and the other two listed here, but I think the most important thing I want to start with is this all-important getting buy-in from the stakeholders. And when we talk about stakeholders, I don't just mean the person who holds the budget or approves the budget. It's, as we all know, your recruitment team, your HR business partners, marketing, whoever it is around the business that can influence your talent brand and influence what you do with it. In my world, data is really important. We're perhaps not as sophisticated as L'Oreal, as we heard earlier this morning, but data is important to Worldpay as a business and important to us as a team. So statistics like those that Lindsay shared this morning are really important for my stakeholders to understand why it is important that we invest in a talent brand and why we build that good reputation as a good place to work. One of the strongest ways of looking at your talent brand as it is now and what you want it to be is visually. So you can use real examples and the professional view of your business. Now, we did an experiment. We typed in the name of the company, so we typed in Worldpay into Google, and we typed in the word talent, clicked on images, and then these are the images that came up. I'm happy overall. There's a little bit of Worldpay, the old Worldpay blue in there. There's no reference to the Royal Bank of Scotland, but there is our old logo and there's a reference to our old values. But on the whole, I think we've done a pretty good job of showing some of our new branding and trying to deliver a new message. I would say that there are some images here that we're not quite so happy with, and they have been put out there by us and unintentionally perhaps created the wrong message. And I shall tell you what I mean. If you look at the picture of our lovely exec team, who are a highly motivated, highly skilled, experienced group of individuals, I think they tend to look a little bit more like candidates for The Apprentice here. And that's not an image they're particularly happy with either, although I would ask you not to tweet what I just said. They don't feel that, I mean, do we feel that conveys the sort of forward-thinking, growing company that we are? Perhaps not. So I guess what I'm stressing is it's so important, your employee profiles, the pictures that are on Google that are associating them with your business are extremely important. I'll touch on Glassdoor. I'm sure we all know Glassdoor. This is about the number of channels. There are a plethora of channels. I mean, there's even more now. I'm suddenly thinking about all the ones that were mentioned earlier. But Glassdoor is one, Facebook, Twitter. What's your presence on there? How do you look? What are you saying? A few months ago, we started looking at Glassdoor and in horror, because our brand looked appalling. We had a terrible rating. Our CEO had a pretty bad rating as well. And actually, candidates were starting to mention Glassdoor in interviews and saying, I've read all this stuff on Glassdoor, I'm not sure whether I really want to join Worldpay. And it made us really stop and think. And we've done an awful lot of work over the last 4 months to try and improve this image. Yes, you put all the pretty pictures on, but it's also about the people, what people are saying. So we're reading the reviews, we're responding, not defensively, but acknowledging that we have read their review and that we will do something about it. We are feeding those reviews up to the board and to our owners, who frankly were appalled when we highlighted it to them. And it has helped us put talent brand culture on their agenda other than just profit. They're a private equity company. Profit has been what it's all about, but now culture is at the heart of it, and our talent brand. And we have very little influence over what people are writing, so it's really important to acknowledge what's being said out there. LinkedIn, of course, couldn't forget LinkedIn. You need to look, it's a great thing to show your stakeholders what your company presence is, what your careers pages are, your employee profiles, good and bad. Do they have one? One of the things I still have to, I wouldn't say it's a battle I have to fight, but our CEO is still not on LinkedIn. So it's about persuading him that he needs to be on LinkedIn because it's about Worldpay and people need to see that he is somebody they want to follow and work for. So to show your stakeholders this is really important and get their buy-in and buy-in of other teams so that you've got consistency across the globe. So you're looking at your brand, talent brand. Why should your stakeholders care? I think one of the key things is about your competition for talent. You can look at your journey across all these channels for talent brand, but then also show them what other companies look like across the channels. So and also identify who your competitors are for talent. That's a whole other presentation, I guess, but it's about who you aspire to be, where you aspire to get your talent from, where are you getting your talent from, and where are they going? And what are they doing differently that you're not doing? What is it about their talent brand that's compelling? So the second point is about scale. It's about starting small. I found that the best thing, once I'd got some buy-in, was to start small with my project, with the project I was going to take to market. And I would make that recommendation for anyone who is not working for an enormous company and has got limited budget and perhaps limited buy-in. And it was about identifying a business need where there was a specific talent requirement. And this is a critical step, I think, in deciding which one you're going to take, which project you're going to work on to promote your talent brand, because you need to be able to measure it, as we'll come on later. And starting small will help you to do that more accurately. So we come on to the metrics, and I think it's really important to agree those metrics up front. We all know it's about placements, we all know it's about getting those roles filled, but it's also what are the other metrics that we want to consider. They don't have to be grand, so really the simpler the better in my mind. But what I would say is that it's not straightforward. If you're joining here today hoping that we're going to give you one nugget of pure gold that is going to take you out there and you can measure your talent brand effectively, you might be a little bit disappointed. We don't believe there is any one way that is foolproof to measure your talent brand, but there are many, and we'll talk about those. So for those of you who aren't from the UK, because I know we've got a lot of people here who've travelled in from abroad, we talk about a silver bullet. A silver bullet is this direct and effortless solution to a problem. We don't believe there is a silver bullet for measuring talent brand holistically. But what you do need to do is get this agreement up front of how you're going to measure, know what you're going to measure, keep it simple, keep it short, and remember that it's not just about the short-term fix, it's about the longer term as well. So present those options that are available for measurement and get that buy-in. It all comes back to the buy-in for the stakeholders.
I'm sure lots of you are familiar with this statement. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I'm a completely self-confessed data geek, as you might have guessed by now. But the reason I love this statement is because I've seen firsthand the power that can have when you put the right metrics in place to measure a project. Today, what we want to do is show you how you can do that when it comes to talent brand. So the big question, how can you measure return on investment of your talent brand strategy? As I said before, we want to make sure that what we're telling you is actionable and very practical, that you can go away and you feel like these are things that you can do tomorrow. Catherine has been kind enough to share results from a Worldpay campaign. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a particular example and talk you through exactly what Catherine and Worldpay did to measure that as the project went through. So let's get started. Let's put these learnings into action. First, what we're going to do is Catherine's going to give you some context about the people she needed to hire, why it was a little bit challenging, and then we'll move on to how do you measure it.
So we have an office in Singapore. We have a growing presence in Asia as a whole, but we were focusing on Singapore at the beginning of the year. We have salespeople out there who are selling our e-commerce solutions. So we have new business, account managers, implementation managers, and important for this, corporate support managers. Now, previously, when we'd had to recruit corporate support managers, we'd gone to agencies. That was the only way we thought we could do it, because mainly we were so far away, we didn't know the market. But I thought that this was a perfect case to have a look and see if we could do this in-house and directly sourcing those candidates. We had a need to recruit around 10 corporate support managers in Singapore and a couple in other areas of Asia Pacific, and we had about 6 months to do it. I felt that our presence in Singapore, we had some presence, but we didn't have we weren't necessarily an employer of choice out there. We'd also never gone direct to the market, so we've never actually put information in front of candidates about Worldpay. It had always been through a third party. So the challenge was we had limited awareness. We were all in London, so there's a time zone issue. Actually, added to that, the recruiter who was responsible for Singapore was also responsible for San Francisco. She loves me. You can imagine her days. And we'd always used agencies. The roles themselves are also not easy to hire. So we want people who are customer service orientated, who have a personality. They also need to have a really good technical skill around our systems. So that's a challenge. And then also they need to be able to speak the local language, but they also need to be able to speak English. So, easy.
I'm sure that challenge resonates with a lot of people here. Different criteria. I know in the US they call it a purple squirrel. I can see some nodding. Everybody has those roles. For me, it's insights analysts in Dublin. So if anybody knows them, feel free to recommend them to me. So practically, how can we go about measuring this return on investment? For this Worldpay example, we've divided the structure into 3 buckets, because I feel like it's really important that you figure out and set the right expectations with stakeholders of what you're going to measure, but more importantly, when you're going to measure it. The last thing you want is the CEO knocking on your door after a couple of weeks into a campaign and saying, where's my results? It's not a short-term play, it's a long-term play. The 3 buckets we have are your immediate results, followed by your wider competitive impact, and finally, and most importantly, what's the final outcome? We're going to dive into each of these areas and show you some hard numbers based on Worldpay's campaign in Singapore to recruit these corporate support managers. Firstly, immediate results. Once your initiative is underway and you start to get things going, you should start to see some performance metrics spiking. In the case of Worldpay, one metric that they chose to use was LinkedIn followers. In Singapore specifically, Worldpay had just less than 300 LinkedIn followers before they began the campaign. It's not a big pool to find those people from, especially given the criteria that Catherine mentioned. Within the first month of their initiative, they increased their LinkedIn follower base by 62%. And as you can see, that trend continued for the following 4 months. That's a really strong result, and one that I'm sure you're very proud of. The best thing about this result is that Catherine was able to go to her stakeholders after the first month and say, thanks very much for your investment. We're starting to see things heading in the right direction, and there's more to come. She'd set the right expectations of what she was going to deliver and when, and directionally it looked good. We saw a similar trend for LinkedIn career page views, except the increase is even bigger. So career page views had an 8x increase in the first month with the initiative that they were running. Again, this was a great way for Catherine to offer reassurance to her stakeholders. Another thing to bear in mind here is this is a great way to offer reassurance that you're targeting the right people and your message is resonating. So it's good after your first month to pause and think, are these results that I want? Do I need to tweak things? Do I need to start again? Is the amount of time, effort, and money I'm putting in, is it paying off? You can use other metrics here, any traffic metrics. So you could use your corporate website traffic, you could use job traffic, and hopefully the story will be similar across all these metrics.
I would say I'm sure you're all sitting there thinking, well, that's lovely, but look what happens when the campaign finishes. All the numbers just drop off. And I would say that's one of the key learnings for us is around keeping the message consistent. We all know time is precious, and it's almost sort of once that campaign's done, those roles are filled, right, forget it, move on to the next thing, forget about Singapore, we're on to another location. But so we saw that and we recognised that, and we know that we need to do something about it. And just around sort of the investment and the people that you're sharing this with, I shared these results with my boss, who's the Group HR Director. I'm very lucky, I think, because he's respects what I do and respects what we can achieve and likes a lot of data and insight. But also he's put resourcing, recruitment, talent acquisition, whatever you want to call it, on the table, the HR leadership team table. So it's right up there along with organisational development, learning and development, etc. And it's an integral part of all those decisions we make as a business. And this kind of data really, really helps with that message.
I think that's a great point to highlight the peaks as well as the troughs. So to show that further investment is needed, there's your business case. Moving on to competitive impact. So as Worldpay were recruiting these people, they were moving them from passive to active. What they started to see, as you can see from the results, is professionals were starting to engage with the brand. They wanted to find out more about what it's like to work in Worldpay. So they were following Worldpay, they were viewing company and career pages, and they were clicking on jobs and potentially even applying. This is a great way, as this conversion happens, to find your candidates and get them engaged, but also for your longer term pipeline. You've got a more warm audience for the future, so it's really investing for the future as well. A way to measure that conversion from passive to active is LinkedIn's Talent Brand Index. I'm sure lots of you here are familiar with Talent Brand Index. It's been around about 2 years, but for those of you who aren't, I'm going to go through the detail of Talent Brand Index today, and I also recommend that you reach out to your LinkedIn representative who can take you through Talent Brand Index for your company, and you can have a more defined discussion on it. Talent Brand Index is essentially a measure of the effectiveness of engaging a particular group of target talent. It's made up of 2 components. The first one is Talent Brand Reach. Talent Brand Reach is the bigger number. It's the group of talent that's familiar with you as an employer. Our research found that people who are familiar with you as an employer are the same people who are viewing your employees' profiles and also are connected to your employees. The smaller number, Talent Brand Engagement, is a subset of Talent Brand Reach. These are the people who are going a step further. They're putting their hand up and they're saying, I want to know more about you as an employer. Maybe not for now, maybe for the future, but I'm going to research your company and career page. I'm going to follow your company and potentially going to view jobs or apply for jobs. The great thing is because all these things happen on LinkedIn, we can measure it. So in the Insights team, we can then run these numbers and see that for Worldpay, they have over 900,000 members in their Talent Brand Reach globally, and 163,000 of them are engaging with them on a monthly basis. This converts to a Talent Brand Index of 18%. 18% might be a good number. It is a good number. But I think for Catherine's particular example here that we've shared, that 18% doesn't mean anything. So when we think about that 18%, she can't say, hey, I ran this campaign in Singapore, our Talent Brand Index globally is 18%. It doesn't really correlate. So the really powerful thing for me about Talent Brand Index, you can slice and dice the data in different ways by working with your LinkedIn representative. We were able to work with Catherine and our team in Worldpay to find out that the Talent Brand Index for Singapore specifically is 44%. That seems like a big jump. That's a better story for you to tell.
Yep.
So Catherine's happy with her 44%. But what she really wants to do is she wants to drive that message home to people in the organization that 44% is a really good Talent Brand Index. They might not be as familiar with what Talent Brand Index is, so it's really important that they understand how good of a result 44% is. And for me, there's 2 ways to do that. The first way is to show peer comparisons. Pick a peer set specific to that region and show how you're performing versus them. And the other one is to show change over time. So our trends, what direction are they heading in? Are they heading up and to the right? Are things looking like they're going in the right direction? There was more good news for Worldpay. So by measuring the Talent Brand Index for Worldpay at 44% versus their peers in Singapore, who as you can see are anonymized, but it tells the story that they're the number 2 employer of choice among their peer set. This is now a really good story for Worldpay to tell. And it means that the stakeholders who've invested in this talent branding are feeling more confident now that the work that they're doing is really paying off.
Absolutely. It's a conversation I can take now about 2015, for example. So I can share the pipeline, share the talent brand that we have, and slice and dice data in all sorts of different ways for each different stakeholder so that they can see the effects of the work that we're doing.
the other thing I mentioned is over time. So here we have the talent brand engagement volumes over time for the wider region. So for the entire region of Asia. What we saw is there was actually a knock-on effect. The branding initiatives that were happening in Singapore were having a knock-on effect. And they increased the monthly number of members they were engaging with from 7,000 to almost doubling that to 14,000 in Asia overall. So again, you can go back to the business and show them, hey, these are going directionally in the right way. And also the impact is bigger than just that campaign to hire those people. So on to the most important one. The most important one is the bottom line. As Catherine said, they want to know about profit. Her stakeholders want to know, so did you hire the people? And how much did it cost us and what was the saving? A couple of months down the line, you're able to see if the hires are in place, that you've managed to attract them and you're able to do a complete review of your initiative. I know that people are busy and they're like, great, I've hired those people, let's move on. But I really recommend that you take the time to stop and do a complete review. And the reason that's important is that will really help you get buy-in for the future. So the next time you want to run a campaign, you have a complete report highlighting all the benefits, not just single benefit that sometimes they can get locked into. So in Catherine's case, they hired 16 professionals in Singapore. 69% of them were impacted by LinkedIn. The great news is Catherine had 2 metrics that she could use to go back to the business and to show that the hires that were made were of a direct impact of the talent branding work. The 2 metrics she used were, number 1, followers. So she showed her stakeholders that 44% of hires were following Worldpay on LinkedIn before being hired. The other one, showing that 11 of the 16 professionals viewed a LinkedIn media or a Worldpay job before being hired. So really trying to tie together the activity that's happened on the network and the final outcome.
Absolutely. So it is all about, as we know, those final results and the placements but the stakeholders saying, well, how long did it take? What's the improvement in that? So we saw a 25% improvement on time to hire from what we were doing this year to last year. Which is obviously significant, particularly in this case when you're getting people into a business where you're selling and you need people to be supporting those sales. We also saw significantly a 30% decrease in the cost per hire. And one of the reasons for that was this. So last year, 2013, our agency usage in that region was around 27%, and it is now 8%. And obviously that's something we want to continue to improve on next year. Also, our LinkedIn followers, when I started with Worldpay a year ago, we were approaching around 10,000 followers on LinkedIn as a company, and we're now, I think, about to hit just 21,000. A million miles away from the 500,000 that L'Oreal has, of course, but it's a massive achievement, I think, in a very, very short space of time.
So great results all around. And just to remind you again, the 3 buckets that you should consider. First of all, thinking about your immediate results. What are the traffic metrics that you're going to commit to in that first month or 2 when your stakeholders are really pressuring you to show that things are working? Then the wider impact. So how are you performing versus your peers? What is the competition like in the market that you're working in? Really setting that picture. And finally, and most importantly, what are the key metrics at the final outcome that are going to resonate with your business? In Catherine's case, it was time to hire, cost of hire, agency usage. It can vary by business, but I think if you've agreed them up front and you take the time to report on them at the end and know that it's something that you can get your hands on the data to report on, it's really powerful.
So what have I learnt? Learnings are so important. I think one of the biggest learnings I had was around the message and the people that you're targeting. So it's all about investing time before you even start putting out emails, putting out targeted advertising or status updates on LinkedIn. It's about who's the audience, what's the addressable audience. Of the LinkedIn team helped enormously understanding that audience in Singapore. And learning from previous campaigns that we'd done, we did one in San Francisco the quarter before, and that wasn't as successful in the short term, although I have since learnt that actually the pipeline of talent that was generated from the San Francisco campaign, whilst it didn't have a particularly good immediate impact, actually 6 months, 9 months later has resulted in 3 hires from that talent pool. So that's terrific. So it's understanding as well the regional variations. You're talking about a very different approach to people from Singapore to San Fran, London. And I can't stress enough that addressable audience, that understanding who's on there, where are they, will they be interested in your talent brand. The other thing, as we all know, is about aligning the whole recruitment process. We are in early days of redefining our process and making sure our candidate experience is consistent. But for Singapore, we made sure that it was. We introduced new assessment techniques so that the interview process was aligned to what we were looking for. It's about making sure that, as we've talked earlier, your presence on Google, your presence on all these online channels, your adverts, your job descriptions, your interview process, your onboarding is aligned so that there isn't this massive disconnect between what you're telling your audience Worldpay is all about and then the actual experience they have as they go through the process. We had feedback from one candidate who actually wasn't a successful candidate, but he emailed to say what a fantastic experience it had been in Singapore because he enjoyed all the messages he'd got, all the interactions, and he enjoyed the robust interview process because he felt like we really cared that this move was the right move for him. So I was really pleased with that feedback. And obviously it's about sharing those results. And as I said earlier, the corporate support team out in Singapore is all part of our e-commerce business. And it's a hugely sales-driven organisation. They want people out there, they need people out there selling, they need people out there in corporate support. So it's about the right bums on seats, it's about placements. And we were able to give them that. But what we were also able to do was take those 3 buckets and show them each of those results as we went through the process. I had a formal review with the CEO of our e-commerce business so that he understood the wider impact of what we were doing in Singapore. And obviously, as Lindsay said, and I said, cost of hire, time to hire, really, really important, but it's also about the value add. It's about the partnership that you can then create with the business to get the talent brand out there and increase your hiring potential. So hopefully we did this. We were less reactive. We can be less reactive in 2015 by doing a lot of the work up front now and looking at those buckets, those measures, looking at the buckets of talent. I talk about buckets a lot, actually, as well at work. And we can be more proactive for 2015 and hopefully be able to share some other successes this time next year. So I hope that was insightful and interesting for you all. We do have 2 microphones at the back, so we're very, very happy to take questions.
If you want to go to the microphones at the back and queue up, we can take your questions from there, just so everybody can hear.
It's a little high up. Hi, so my name is Jenny. My question is, what role do recruiters have in building your talent brand?
Sorry, say again.
What role do recruiters have in building your talent brand?
I think they play a massive role. We don't have a marketing team that's specific to recruiting, so they play a very, very important role in helping us with the content, in getting those messages, in communicating with those talent pools. So they are effectively doing this alongside having to fill goodness knows how many recs at the same time. So they play a very important part. We don't have, as I said, a massive sort of extended team. So they are key. So helping them understand how important it is also key to success.
Thanks.
Hello, Melissa. Just wondering what the activity was that you did to increase the number of followers and the traffic to the career pages.
So we did a combination of lots of things. We had a tailor-made careers page for Singapore, put testimonials on there from people in the office, stories about the office, updates. We also did a lot of the targeted advertising. So we would get our addressable market and tailor adverts and pop them onto their homepage or whatever. And then we also used the traffic driver in mails. So we we designed an in-mail with some information and a piece of video about working at Worldpay, and then you drop it into, I don't know, send 2,500 of those in-mails to highly targeted people, and then you're asking them as a call to action at the end. So you're asking them to respond that they're interested. They get filed in a project, and then you keep up the communication.
So the key takeaway is not just one thing to
It's
get
lots.
those results. There seems to be a lot going on.
Thanks.
Another question here?
Yeah. Hi, this is Asha. I was curious, you mentioned earlier about viewed media as a way of measuring impact. Is that just viewing in-mails, or is that also viewing ads? And if so, how are you able to kind of connect the dots? Did you have to ask the candidates, or is that something LinkedIn provides?
So from a LinkedIn point of view, we can do it, but not from the wider point of view. So you need to ask candidates. I think that's the important thing about figuring out what metrics you have available and what you're going to report on based on what tools you have. Any more questions? If you just want to go to the mic down the back there, please.
Hi, it's Ola here. I have a question about other metrics you have mentioned, that it would be cost of hire and time to hire. Did you notice any significant increase or decrease of cost of hire after doing this campaign?
Oh, so what you mean the activity that's now going on? No, actually, we've managed to maintain a pretty reasonable cost and time to hire, in fact. So even though the followers dropped off, the engagement with that audience hasn't. And that's really because you've now got this project, or you've got this pool of people who are interested in opportunities at Worldpay. So the San Francisco example, as I said, we didn't necessarily have the most successful campaign, not as successful as Singapore in the short term, but in the long term, when new roles have become available, we've been able to dip into that pipeline, that pool of talent that said, yes, I'm interested in Worldpay, and get a job in front of them and get them hired within a very quick time at very low cost.
Thank you. And was your campaign for San Francisco much different than your campaign for Singapore, or was it the same kind of activities you have mentioned?
It was the same kind of activities, but a slightly different message. And I think with San Francisco, we didn't tailor the audience well enough. So we were very, very broad in our targeting, whereas actually in Singapore, we were a little bit more targeted.
Hi, good morning. I was wondering if you compare the cost of the campaign against how much it would have cost going through the agencies that was your previous channel, and what was the ratio between the two of them?
Well, that's the cost per hire decrease. So if I took the agency cost previously, which was agency only in 2013, to the cost of the campaign specifically for Singapore, plus I think we had one agency hire or something in that area, and that was the 30% drop.
Okay, thanks.
Great, any more questions?
Hi, it's probably more of a question for Lindsay around the Talent Brand Index. I'm really familiar with the Talent Brand Index. So I guess the one question I had was, can you dive a little bit deeper into that data in terms of town, city, or even kind of business profession?
So there's limitations to how deep you can go. You can go to country level or function level, for example, but not town or city.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you for your speech. Svetlana from Wargaming. I had an impression that mostly with your campaign you targeted people who were not aware about you, but in the same time were attracted afterwards. But did you have some key talent that you would like to approach in the first place? And was this approach different from the one that you described?
For this particular campaign, we didn't necessarily have any key talent because they were quite, I wouldn't say they're volume roles, but we didn't have anybody specifically. If I was approaching key talent that I knew about, that the team knows about, then we would use a different way of targeting those people, and it would probably be the more traditional way of finding them on LinkedIn and emailing them, or even, you know, really old-fashioned and picking up the phone.
Thank you.
No. If anybody had a question and then didn't feel that they wanted to go up to a microphone and ask it, I think we have one more actually.
Yeah, we'll be around at lunchtime. Oh, we have one more.
Hello. Yes, thank you. I have just one more question. How did you decide what your brand message was for the market? Did you involve your internal employees, or how did you do that?
Yes, we did that. So we worked closely with, as I said, we just rebranded. So actually I was quite fortunate in that when we did the rebrand, there was an awful lot about us as a culture and us as a business and those brand personalities. But we also involved those that work in the local office and used their knowledge of what works out there, what's important to our candidates who go and work there, and they helped us write the message, if you like, and understand what we needed to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining today's session.